Hey guys, this is our craft project for this week. We are going to make these little nest necklaces. If you've been with Mops for a while, you have made one of these before. I think that they're so cute. Great idea for Mother's Day if you wanted to make one as a gift for someone or for yourself. I had a friend give me her kids' favorite colors, since their birthstones would be the same, to make one for her as a demo for you guys. So just these little wire nest necklaces with little pearlescent beads and an 18-inch chain. This is our craft. So you have in your kit your bead colors. Mine are rolling away here. Here are my 4 bead colors. If you chose to include a wing to represent a child that is no longer in your nest, you'll have one of those as well. I also have, there's your wire. This is a really thin jewelry wire. It's super easy to bend. And then there are your chain options as well. So let's get started. This is going to be a little bit longer video because it's a little bit longer craft. To begin, you find the end of your wire, and I just like to curl it around my finger once or twice just to get a good base to start. Then tuck in this little pokey end because we don't want to get stabbed by that when we're wearing it. So I just give it a twist around, kind of like a twist tie, so it's nice and tucked. Then I make a little bit of a star shape going under and then over. Try to keep it in camera for you. Under and then over. And what we're doing here is just making the base for the bottom of your nest. The bottom just kind of is a little bit messy, and it just holds those beads in place so they don't fall through. Once you have gone in kind of this star or triangle shape, I mean, it's a little bit of a messy star, but you get the idea, a few times, then instead of going back and forth across, we're going to start going around. I'm just going to bend that wire, and I'm going to start going around the circle. Have to hold this. It will, if you bend it, it will spring back. So you've got to hold on to it as you bend to keep that twist in place. So I'm just going around, putting a little bend in it. And as I let go, you can see it loosens up a little bit. You're going to do this until it looks a little bit like a nest, so you feel like you have enough around the sides. Your piece of wire is about 5 feet long, so you've got plenty to work with, and we're not going to add the beads into the nest until after the nest is mostly formed. Keep in mind how many beads you're adding so that you make sure you've got room for them to include them inside your nest. So I've gone around, I don't know, maybe 10 times if I counted. Here's my little nest so far. Now I'm going to find the end of my wire. Oh, I've got quite a bit left. I'm going to go around a couple more times. You can kind of begin to go over like we did before, and then tuck under. And that will just help hold your nest pieces in place. See, I'm reaching over, so I'm no longer making it round and changing it into more of a triangle shape, and then wrapping under. And that helps to hold the coil of wire kind of in place for us as we move on to the next step. So you can see that star shape begin to show up again as we go over and under and over and under. All right, that looks better. I probably have half of my wire left. Now you're going to find your other end, and right now my wire is behind my nest. It's underneath. I've decided this is the top and this is the bottom. I chose arbitrarily. Take your wire and we're going to poke it down through some of that center so that we're going to go around the edge of the nest. And as you do this, do it a little slowly and carefully, because if you kink your wire, it will make all the rest of your steps a little bit harder. So I'm just pushing this through nice and slowly. See, I have this tight coil. I'm going to uncoil it in my hand so that I can carefully push it through without making a kink in the wire. After this, your wire in your hand will get a lot smaller and easier to work with. So then I've pulled it nice and tight, and I'm gonna go through that same spot again so that I have 2 little loops around the outside edge. So down in between around my nest, I'm just pushing that wire through around the same spot. Still just pushing it in and then pulling tight from the back to create a loop. Oh, and it looks like my first one came untucked from the back, so now I only have 1 loop. That's okay, we've got 1 loop locking this in place. I'm gonna do it one more time. Same place. Pulling that wire through again. There we go. 2 little loops holding that wire nest in place. Now, I'm not going to come back around and make the circle again. This time I'm going under, across that bottom where I've got this nest space, to the other side. So I've turned it over to the other side. Now my wire is still coming out from underneath the nest. I'm going to take my end again and push it in towards the center of the nest. It doesn't matter if you catch every single loop of wire, just kind of get it in there. So I don't have the whole nest, but I have most of it. And I'm going to pull that wire tight. There it is, 1 little loop. I'm going to do it one more time in the same place to make 2 loops so it's nice and secure. I haven't hit exactly the same place. Now I've looped a few extra wires. That's okay. It's a nest. Birds' nests are not all identical and symmetrical. They don't match, so it will be fine. I'm going to do this a couple more times on either side. I'm underneath the nest again. I'm going to come up through that tangle in the middle and go around the outside of the nest, making sure not to kink that wire as I pull it through, because then it will make a hard tangle to deal with later. Apologies if this leaves the frame. It's a little bit awkward to film it this way. Underneath the nest, and I'm going to come up to this side right over here and do 1 more, and then we will add our beads. So I came up, pulling my wire around. I'm holding it with my fingers in the back just because that feels comfortable to me. It's a little bit like sewing, like this is the fabric and this is the needle. Put it up through the bottom, pull it all the way up. Pull it tight. All right, now I am up through the top of the nest right now. And I've got 1 loop here that I just made. I'm going to wrap it around to finish that 2nd loop. And now I'm going to come up through the middle, somewhere in here in my star mess that we made originally, so that my wire comes from the edge to now come up out of the middle of the nest. I've got a little bit of a kink in there, so you want to untangle it and straighten it out. Pull it through. Okay, now we add our first bead. They slide right on, really easy, slides right down to the nest. And then I'm just gonna go in through some of this tangle here. Just pick an arbitrary spot, poke through, make sure it's not the spot you just came out of, because then it won't stay, and pull it through. Now that bead is attached. I'm gonna come up in another spot. And add the next bead. Had trouble finding the hole on that one. And then back down into the middle of the nest. I'm just pushing that bead so that it lays flat, so that the wire is going through the bead horizontally, and so it's not, you're not seeing the wire stick up when you're wearing it. Oh, there it goes. All right, push up through again. I've got 2 more beads to go because I have 4 kids. I pulled close to their birthstone colors for this, though I don't really know their birthstone colors very well. I guess June is purple, which I wasn't aware of. My 10-year-old son probably won't be thrilled to know that. All right, back in to tuck this bead in. And 1 more. I think I'm going to come up on this side over here. Looks like there's a big open space. Here's our last bead. So as you get your last one on there, just make sure everything's tucked and laying the way you want it to. I'm kind of pushing this one over so that it stays over here between the purple and the red, because that's where I want it to be. Push everything down. It puts a little bit of a kink in your wire so that it's more likely to stay. My wire right now is coming out of just the back in the center of my nest. So from here, if you would like to add a wing to your nest, you can add that on now. Hook around the outside of our nest, just like we had done before when we were making loops. So this is coming from the bottom center of the nest. I've attached the wing, then I'm gonna go back in. This is what I've decided will be the bottom of my nest so that it will hang nicely from the bottom. And then that's where your wing would be attached. Okay, I'm going to pull this one off because I do not plan to include a wing on mine. If you do, follow that step. So I will go around that edge without the wing. Now, this is where we're at. I've got a little less than 2 feet of wire left. I'm going to make a couple more loops around my edges just to really hold my nest really securely. I think maybe I'll do one over here and one over here. This one is going to be my loop for the top of the necklace. Apologies if you hear that rustling. That's my dog in his kennel. We wore him out on a walk today, so he's been napping most of the afternoon. All right, here's 2 loops down here at the bottom. So now I'm going to move up here to what I've decided will be the top, right up here. I'm going to make another loop just the way we started and like the one I just made, going around from the bottom around the outside edge of the nest. So there's one. Now I'm going to use my finger as a spacer. I'm going to go around my finger and hold my finger in that place for a minute and go in again in the same spot. Okay, kind of squeezed my finger in there. I'm going to pull it out gently, and then I'm going to give a little bit of a pinch to this loop so that it's more of a raindrop. Okay, now from the back, I'm going to go back through the front again to kind of secure that loop so that it doesn't get pulled in. So I made a tight loop, a loose loop around my finger, and then another tight loop. I still have quite a bit of wire. I think I'm going to go ahead and do another tight loop at this place, just because I can. All right, here is my nest. Can kind of squish the edges to make it exactly the way you'd like. Now with this extra wire, your very last step is to kind of just weave back and forth to make a nice bottom for your nest. If you put a little hook in your wire, that might make it easier to go in and out of some of these places. This just helps secure the bottom of your nest so that it's nice and flat against whatever clothes you're wearing. You don't want to snag it with wire. I'm just pushing with my thumb to push that flat and make a kink. I'm going to go in a different place, hook across over here. You do not need to do this with your whole piece of wire. I would recommend doing it just a couple of times. Oh, I can't push it in over there. Let's try a different spot. Sorry, I keep knocking the tripod. You guys are going to be seasick. All right, I'm going to pull that through. Okay, with this last little bit of wire, I'm not going to use the rest of this. I've got, I don't know, roughly a foot left, but I think this looks nice and flat. I don't think there's any snags on here that are going to catch anything. So I'm going to clip this off with about 1 inch so that I can wrap this and shove that end deep in there so that it hangs out in this depth between the bottom of the nest and the beads on the top. These are just regular cheap scissors that I bought in like a pack of 12 for school. They cut through the wire super easy. You don't need to use wire snips or anything. You could, but you don't need to. I would not use craft scissors or fabric scissors, scissors that you want to stay sharp. Don't use those on wire. Okay, I just kind of poked that end in and now it's sticking up right here. So I'm trying to pull it out again enough that I can fold it over. Can you see that? I know it's real tight and it's all the same color. Here's my little end that I wrapped in from here around, shoved it through my outside of my nest. It came up here. Now it's sticking there. See, that's going to snag all my sweaters. But if I take it and tuck the end in with my nail, or you can use the end of your scissors or have your friend next to you do it, I'm just going to push on that a little bit and poke it towards the middle. So now, here's this little end, it's this piece. It's totally looped around, no sharp spots, and it doesn't come up in the middle. So there it is. There is your nest necklace. I realize this is a really long video. If you need to stop and start as you go, watch the parts you need, fast forward what you don't, that whatever works for you so that you can make your very own nest.